I'm Esther Giduyuat. It's Tuesday, September 6th. This is Africa 54.
The heaviest seasonal rains in over 30 years leave parts of Chad's capital navigable only by boat, forcing thousands to flee their homes. As Somalia copes with a devastating drought, the United Nations says famine is likely to hit the East African nation in just a few months. And in our health report, an in-depth discussion on how medical experts say artificial intelligence is transforming the practice of medicine.
We begin in Central Africa, where thousands are being forced out of their homes as heavy rains have submerged parts of Chad's capital, N'Djamena. David Doyle has more.
Parts of Chad's capital city can now only be navigated by boat. The Central African country has seen its heaviest seasonal rainfall in more than 30 years. In N'Djamena's 8th district, families have to pile into wooden boats to cross streets that have been awash with fetid water since the end of July. Hassan Hussein Achek lives in the capital. He said local authorities need to take responsibility.
None of the district's neighbourhoods were spared by the floods this year. It's really sad to see so many people suffering. We need to urgently find a solution to remove all that water.
Floods are not uncommon in the Central African country's rainy season, but this time the deluge came early and more abundantly. Drainage channels and ponds were quickly overwhelmed. Chad has not witnessed this level of rainfall since 1990, according to a senior official at the state weather agency. He added that whole towns have found themselves underwater. Aid agencies say thousands have been forced to flee their homes over the past month. In the 8th district, many residents have sought refuge at a local school. Caroline Mercedes says she and her 4 children have been sleeping rough with no money for the past 3 weeks after their home collapsed.
We are at the mercy of mosquitoes. We have no food and some of us have malaria. Nobody is thinking of helping us. Authorities are looking at us from afar as if we were migrating birds.
N'Djamena's mayor says the government has set up an emergency crisis committee to provide food, blankets and health kits. Many at the school say they're still waiting. In recent years, flooding disasters have been more frequent in West and Central Africa. That, according to the Notre Dame Global Adaptation Initiative, is a result of intense rainfall, land degradation and poor urban planning in countries that are among the most vulnerable to climate change. From N'Djamena to Dakar, several countries have seen above average rainfall over the past month, leaving vast areas submerged.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. The United Nations humanitarian chief says there are concrete indications that famine will hit parts of Somalia between October and December. Paul Ndiho has the details.
There are concrete indications that famine will occur in parts of Somalia between October and December, the UN's humanitarian chief said on Monday. Martin Griffiths made the warning in the capital Mogadishu, against a backdrop of worsening drought and global food prices hovering at near record highs.
I've been shocked to my core these past few days by the level of pain and suffering we see so many Somalis enduring. Famine is at the door, and today we are receiving a final warning.
The Horn of Africa is experiencing its worst drought in 40 years. Experts say the region is on track for its 5th consecutive failed rainy season. Griffiths said the current situations and trends resembled those when famine hit Somalia a decade ago.
Except now they're worse. The unprecedented failure of 4 consecutive rainy seasons, decades of conflict, mass displacement, severe economic issues are pushing many people to the brink of famine.
More than 250,000 people died in the 2010 to 2012 famine, and half of them were children.
A central bank plan to give cheaper credit to farmers in Nigeria's northern maize belt is being credited with a predicted boost in output. Here's Clara Frank with more.
It's a tough time to be a farmer in northern Nigeria's maize belt. Those like James Ona face high costs of diesel and fertilizer. And that's on top of the threat of militants and gunmen who have forced families off their farms.
Our lives are not really secure in the farms. So it makes us, we are really not really safe like we used to be before.
Despite these challenges, Nigeria says it expects to produce 23 million metric tons of maize this year. That's a 12% annual increase. The reason, the Maize Growers Association says, is cheaper credit from the central bank, helping to blunt the higher costs.
A lot of funds have been advanced to farmers.
Edwin Chigozie Uche, president of the Maize Growers and Processors Association of Nigeria, says commercial banks are not keen to lend to farmers due to the insecurity and higher risk of default. The central bank initiative is aimed at reducing grain imports, which it says are a drain on foreign exchange. The 23,000 metric ton estimate is still 7,000 short of Nigeria's annual requirement. Maize, along with rice and wheat, are the most consumed grains in Nigeria. But with production costs increasing, prices are skyrocketing for sellers and consumers, says cereals trader Destiny Chibuzo.
So our customers, they are complaining that the corn is very costly. We don't know what will happen next year.
But back on his farm, Ona says it is the only way.
I believe it will help us to cover up for the cost of the expenses we did during the farming season. So the current price in the market is not bad. We're happy with it.
To ensure their security, farmers are grouping together to form armed patrol groups. State governments also set up agro-rangers to provide security to those communities that are feeding the nation. Clara Frank, VOA News, Washington.
At least 35 civilians were killed in Burkina Faso and 37 others wounded in the northern part of the country on Monday when a vehicle in a convoy hit an improvised explosive device, according to a statement from the interim government. VOA's Bagasi Kura has more.
The town of Dori is in the Sahel part of Burkina Faso. It is in the north of the country, the hardest hit part of the country by jihadist movement, along with the town of Djibo. Dori is cut off from the rest of the country, so the population in Dori in recent months have no access to food, to cooking oil, to basic needs, no fuel at all. So in recent week, there have been a talk to organize one of those convoys, a militarized convoy, so that civilians can come back to the capital, Ouagadougou, to get some food, and then they will go back. So in this convoy, you have drivers, traders, and a lot of civilians. You have people who were coming to the capital to get the basic need, but also people who are trying to use this convoy to flee the region so that they do not have to come back. And then last night, finally, they decided that was the right day. The convoy took the road to Ouagadougou. After a few miles, they hit an IED. 35 civilians have been killed and at least 37 people killed. All night, there have been helicopters flying wounded people from the region to local hospital. This happened a day after the president of the transition, the chief of the junta, Colonel Damiba, said that after 7 months since he took over the country, that there was some sort of calm, that peace was coming back in some region, that villagers were returning, which is, according to analysts, very far from the truth, because there have been several attacks since his speech, And then you have this one, which is one of the major attacks since the attacks of the town of Seitenga, which is nearby Dori, the same region, a few months ago, where 86 civilians were killed. So the country, months after the coup in January 24, is still suffering from militant attack, and Burkina Faso is about to cross the mark of 2 million displaced people, internal displaced population, in not only in the north of the country, but also in the south and in the west of the country, where jihadists are very much present. According to estimate, almost 50% of the country is out of the control of the government.
That was VOA Bambara Service Chief Bagasi Kura. In southern Africa, the Angolan Constitutional Court on Tuesday denied an injunction by the opposition UNITA party challenging the victory of the ruling MPLA party, in which incumbent President Joao Lourenço was declared winner of the presidential election. Here's VOA's Myra de la Salette with more.
The 10 judges of the Constitutional Court of Angola rejected the action taken by UNITA, which asked the body to dismiss the election report from the National Electoral Commission, giving count of the definitive results for the elections held on August 24th. Due to the fact that there are two main lawsuits asking for the recount of votes and the elimination of irregularities in the electoral process, the Constitutional Court also did not grant Casa CS injunction. However, the president of UNITA reiterated that the distribution of deputies in the National Assembly is different from that announced by the National Electoral Commission, and in favor of UNITA, which, according to him, won the election. Adalberto Costa Jr. called for the creation of a multidisciplinary commission made up of the National Electoral Commission and the competing parties with national and international observers to compare the different reports of the parties that ran on the 24th of August. The director of the Political Parties Office of the Constitutional Court, Mauro Alexandre, has already ruled out the participation of international observers. The court has 72 hours to decide and declare the election valid or not, which deadline is on Thursday. This decision, though, can come before. In the meantime, the armed forces of Angola were ordered to be in readiness for combat since September 5th until the 20th, which is right after the inauguration of the new president. Myra de la Salette for Voice of America, Washington.
Angola's National Electoral Commission declared the ruling party MPLA winner of the general elections held on August 24th with 51% of the vote, while UNITA, the second most voted party, got nearly 44% of the votes. But a final decision on the election court challenge is expected on Thursday. British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is Britain's new Prime Minister, replacing Boris Johnson at a time of economic upheaval and escalating energy bills. The 47-year-old Truss is the third woman to lead the country and Britain's fourth Prime Minister in 6 years. She prevailed in an intra-party vote, defeating the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak. After her victory was announced, Truss told a party gathering, "I campaigned as a Conservative, and I will govern as a Conservative."
During this leadership campaign, I campaigned as a Conservative, and I will govern as a Conservative. And my friends, we need to show that we will deliver over the next 2 years. I will deliver a bold plan to cut taxes and grow our economy. I will deliver on the energy crisis, dealing with people's energy bills, but also dealing with the long-term issues we have on energy supply.
Truss, once an opponent of pulling Britain from the European Union, but now a staunch supporter of Brexit, holds hawkish foreign policy views, as is expected, like Johnson, to remain a steadfast link in the Western alliance, sending aid to Ukraine in its fight against Russia's 6-month-old invasion. African leaders are lamenting the failure of European leaders to travel to Rotterdam for the Africa Adaptation Summit, which is seen as a critical stepping stone on the road to November's COP27 meeting in Egypt. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
Presidents from Senegal, Ghana, and the Democratic Republic of Congo are concerned over the absence of European leaders from the Africa Adaptation Summit in Rotterdam. African leaders have criticized the lack of their Western counterparts, who pleaded for funds to help their countries adapt to global warming. European heads of state from France, Denmark, Finland, and Norway failed to attend the meeting, in which developed nations are expected to make commitments to the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program. Senegalese President and Africa Union Chairperson Macky Sall says wealthy countries are responsible for most CO2 emissions and should have been there. We share this planet Earth, and those responsible for global warming, and this has been scientifically proven. They are industrialized countries. Therefore, Europe, in particular the United States and China, etc., are responsible for pollution and global warming. But we are on the same planet, and now they are asking us to adapt, not to follow their pollution path. The Senegalese leader added that it was not just the fate of Africa that is at stake, but the fate of humanity and the future of the planet. The Director General of the World Trade Organization, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, stressed the importance of the free flow of trade in achieving the summit's goals.
We just need countries to be very active in actually implementing what they're saying. And of course, the absence of the leaders here sends some signal. You have several leaders who came all the way from Africa to participate in this conference, and they were looking forward to seeing leaders from Europe and elsewhere.
Africa emits just 3% of global CO2 emissions. Former UN Chief Ban Ki-moon added.
The critical opportunity, we cannot squander this moment when we are all living in a climate emergency. And the key deliverables that has been outlined for COP27 is to show that the doubling on adaptation finance is happening, and that is flowing into real country-led program. And the Africa adaptation for the world. I am deeply grateful and quite touched and also satisfied with what all these leaders have been promising their action to make sure that not only Africa, but all throughout the world, we can really realize a better world for our future.
The summit, the first to focus on helping Africa adopt the fallout from climate change, brings together the African Union, the International Monetary Fund, and other partners, and the Netherlands-based Global Center for Adaptation. They are hoping to raise pledges of some 250 million in capital to attract investors in adaptation programs. Paul Ndiho, VOA News.
Still to come in our health report, China approves the world's first inhalable COVID vaccine. But first, Hedy Adams tells us what's coming up on Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
The luxury fashion brands Louis Vuitton, Valentino, Marc Jacobs, and more recently Christian Dior and Hermes are high-end fashion powerhouses that have drawn some of their inspiration from Africa's flavorful culture and fashion. But is Africa being given enough credit for its fashion innovation? This week, we're bringing you the most authentic fashions from the continent. Plus, we'll explain how African designers are striving to bring their culture on the international stage. Join us each week right here on Our Voices.
In other African news, International Criminal Court officials are in Guinea to monitor preparations for a much-delayed trial over a 2009 massacre that left more than 100 people dead. At least one person was killed in the eastern Congo city of Beni Tuesday when shots were fired during a protest against the UN peacekeeping mission. And U.S. envoy Mike Hammer visited Ethiopia Tuesday to seek a halt to renewed clashes between pro-government forces and Tigrayan rebels in the country's war-torn north. It's time for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with news on a measles outbreak in Zambia. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther. Zambian health authorities say a measles outbreak, which initially started in northwestern Zambia earlier this year, is now spreading to other parts of the country. At least 475 people are infected. According to Health Minister Sylvia Masebo, authorities detected an outbreak in Sizazongwe and Pemba, two districts located in Zambia's Southern province. None of the patients were vaccinated against measles. The government has deployed rapid response teams in the affected areas to offer vaccinations and guidance on prevention measures. Chinese drug regulators have approved the world's first inhalable COVID-19 vaccine manufactured by CanSino Biologics. The company says the needle-free vaccine can be stored and administered more easily than intramuscular jabs. Scientists conducted a clinical trial on adult patients who had already received 2 doses of the Chinese injectable CoronaVac vaccine. A booster vaccine by inhalation on day 28 provided robust antibody responses, according to the researchers. They say the nasal vaccines could block infection more effectively than those currently used by injection. No independent study has yet evaluated its effectiveness. Medical experts say artificial intelligence is transforming the practice of medicine. They say AI is helping doctors diagnose patients more accurately, contribute to improving communication between physician and patient, and transcribing medical documents such as prescriptions, and remotely treating patients as well. A digital health startup, Euron AI, is building culturally sensitive AI-powered applications targeted to people of African descent. Euron AI aims to bridge the gap of cancer care outcomes in underserved regions by using data and algorithms to help cancer patients manage their care, increase access to oncologists, and navigate complex healthcare systems for better treatment compliance. I spoke with Dr. Kingsley Ndo, founder and chief strategist for Euron AI, about the transformation ongoing in medicine with artificial intelligence. Take a look.
This project is very personal to me. My favorite aunt died from advanced stage colorectal cancer. A year prior to that, she was complaining of just abdominal symptoms, and she was being treated in one of the best hospitals in Nigeria, and they were treating her for reflux disease. And then when I began to reflect on this and look at the data, I realized that my aunt was not an isolated case. That sort of motivated me, and that inspired me to want to do something about it.
Why the choice of artificial intelligence? You are a medical doctor. Why did you make that jump, and what does the project itself consist of?
There is a need to use data from people of African descent to drive some of these technological processes that are already happening in other parts of the world. We have a physician-facing side where doctors, can see the basic data of their patients, the demographic and clinical data, and they can monitor their patients based on patient-reported outcomes. On the other hand, patients have their smartphones or just their mobile phones. They can use a USSD system, which is a text-based system. When a patient is on a treatment regimen, they get questions that is specific to the kind of side effects that are anticipated based on the data that the doctors already have, and then they can score these side effects. They can also get like open-ended questions like, how are you doing? And they can input that data. And every time when the physician comes to a hospital and opens their system to check how their patients are doing, and they can know what to address in a timely fashion. We found that 70% of the complaints that patient has can basically be addressed through text. When there's an emergency, the suggestion is sent to them to go to the nearest hospital. And with the data that we are building from the beta trials that we're currently conducting in Rwanda, we're going to be building machine learning models that can help predict best treatments for patients.
If they are not health literate, they don't have a cell phone, for example, how is this solution going to work for them?
They can have their $50 mobile phones and they can still access the services. The other feature that we've included is to include major local languages. And when patients are entering data, it's very simple. They don't have to be super educated. A lot of the side effects scoring system is just a yes or no, or mild, moderate, severe.
Will there be a need to adapt the solution in each country depending on the local needs?
The problems are quite similar. Obviously, we're going to adapt and tweak things depending on the country, but that shouldn't take a whole lot of time. We want to ensure that we have the right data to support the processes throughout the cancer control continuum.
A lot of times we don't hear about therapeutic side effects and medications and vaccines. Why was it important for you to focus on that as well?
Of all the oncology medications that were approved by the FDA in the past 20 years, less than 3% of people who participated in that clinical trial were people of African descent. Furthermore, a group in University of Virginia did a study, and they were trying to find out why, African-American women weren't responding well to a certain breast cancer drug. And what they found is that those African-American women, they had a higher frequency of certain side effects compared to Caucasians. We've not been able to really reach the kind of data diversity we want to have. One of the major ways to know this is just to see what's happening from a place where it's just over 90% Blacks. When we talk to people on the ground, that was a big pain point. Patients felt disconnected. They felt that they don't have anyone to help them. That's why we focused at this early stage on just that data, so that we can have like a full spectrum and we can have better patient compliance and completions for their therapies, and obviously better outcomes.
And that was Dr. Kingsley Undo, founder of Heron AI. And that's our show for today, our health report for today, rather. Esther, back to you.
Thank you, Lino. Be sure to watch Lino Mudu's health reports every Tuesday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.